Hello, welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
Tonight, the relentless battle against fires in Queensland and New South Wales again dominates the news. Weary firefighters see no end in sight.
We desperately need rain, not the dry storms that are forecast. They are more lightning and wind than anything else. So fireys are worried with very high fire warnings for southeast Queensland and severe fire warnings for the Darling Downs and the Granite Belt.
With today's increased temperature, those westerly winds and real danger of dry lightning and perhaps wind gusts, we're predicting maybe up to 100 kilometres an hour. So we're certainly back into severe fire weather conditions today.
Firefighters are battling to gain upper hand as 30 fires burn across the state. The Minister for Water Resources visited the bushfire-ravaged, bone-dry town of Stanthorpe.
What we saw on the ground was just horrific.
He says the states have to work more closely with the Commonwealth on conserving water resources for future crises. The Queensland government ridiculed the criticism.
It is Queenslanders who are picking up the pieces, disaster after disaster, who have tuned out to the flat earthers like David Littleproud.
The political point scoring will probably not do much to help thousands of firefighters, exhausted but fighting on. And it's little better over the border, where a blaze at Tenterfield is now at a watch and act level.
Whilst we are seeing some rain move up the coast, it's not going to be enough to extinguish these fires.
Megan Rainbird, QUT News.
Given the current drought and wildfires, the federal government is urging the eastern states to speed up the construction of dams, and not just for the regions already suffering.
The extreme weather across the country has leaders in Canberra worried. They are applying pressure to Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria to hurry dam building.
It is time for the eastern states to do their job. They've done 3/5 of bugger all.
The federal government maintains it has money available that hasn't been taken up. It's concerned that if new dams aren't built before 2030, water levels will drop significantly. The supply to Victoria could fall by 43%, New South Wales by 33% and Queensland by 37%.
And it's time for them to start planning and start building.
This call comes as snow covers the Blue Mountains and rain pours in Sydney, but it's nowhere near enough to compensate for years of relative drought, and the Commonwealth is warning that the situation is dire. Max Mellett, QUT News.
Queensland researchers are recruiting for the world's largest skin cancer study. They want 20,000 volunteers to give up some saliva.
Skin cancers are invasive and deadly. Now scientists want to know how genes play a role in their development. And they hope your spit might tell them. They're looking for more than 20,000 mature volunteers.
People over the age of 30 are starting to show signs of sun damage, and they're starting to develop skin cancers at a rate that makes them attractive to be in the study.
Australia has the highest rate of skin cancer in the world, with more than 400,000 people treated annually.
1 in 3 people have a skin cancer by the time they're 50, which is a big number.
Saliva is a quick way of getting DNA and information about genes. So that's what the researchers are seeking.
I'm quite aware that my previous sun exposure has raised the risk that I might get cancer, so it's something that I wanted to contribute to part of the study to find those genes that are contributing to cancer.
You can take part in the study by visiting the QSkin Genetics webpage. While research is still ongoing, the expert advice is the best way to protect yourself. Sit in the shade, slip, slop and slap on a hat. Amber Gifford, QUT News.
The abortion debate in New South Wales is causing grief for the Premier. But for the moment, rebel backbenchers have backed down on a threat to topple her.
Premier Gladys Berejiklian left her house ready to defend her job after 3 MPs from her own party threatened a leadership challenge.
Do you have a message for the rebels at all, Premier?
The MPs are unhappy the Premier supports the reproductive healthcare bill, and the draft legislation is separating public opinion. Pro-choice advocates say any amendments would stifle the purpose of the bill. Parliamentary debates are expected to drag on. Libby Hopper, QUT News.
Australians, worried about the future, haven't been spending as much lately, but apparently they intend to. A bank survey has indicated that consumers are more prepared to look for a new home than several months ago, and are more positive about spending. The survey put that down to tax refunds and a stronger housing market. But apparently business is still worried about the China-US trade war.
Media workers killed during frontline reporting have been honoured in Brisbane. Army and media officials came together at QUT to pay their respects.
The poignant ceremony was held in Kelvin Grove's historic Para Place, which honours Australia's most influential war photographer, Damien Para. Para risked his life every day, working to get the perfect shot of the frontline soldiers during World War II. He died with a camera in his hand.
They put themselves out there, they've got no guns, but that's what they are like. I mean, the good ones, that's all they want to do. They don't care if they get killed.
95 war correspondents and artists lost their lives in 2018 while reporting in war zones and areas of civil unrest. Others risked arrest, torture and injury.
I think they show great courage, they show moral courage in speaking honestly.
Like Para, they all strive to tell the true story of the horrors as well as the mateship during combat.
I mean, almost all the qualities that they show are the qualities that we espouse, certainly in the Army.
The serving brigadier assured those who were there to remember that the stories of the frontline reporters will always remain part of Australia's history.
Whether it's a war correspondent or a war artist, and to tell it through their eyes so honestly is really important to us.
Journalists and media workers have become an integral part of our military, earning respect and showing the human side of war. Today's tribute has honoured generations of Australians. Georgia Collings, QUT News.
Some of Brisbane's best masters of disguise, called cosplayers, are donning their outfits. They're preparing for what they believe is the pop culture event of the year, ComicCon.
It's the biggest dress-up party of the year. ComicCon brings together all types of people sharing in one common interest, comics.
Absolutely. Anyone. It doesn't matter if you're old or young, anyone can join in on cosplay.
Cosplayers spend hours perfecting their costumes. Some even take on 2 characters a day.
They will spend all their working money for weeks and weeks and weeks just to make this costume come to life and to bring their character to life and enjoy their time at con.
The convention attracts celebrities from around the world. This year, look out for some big names.
We've got John Barrowman from Doctor Who coming this year. We also have, for all the Marvel viewers, Hayley Atwell, aka Peggy Carter.
The event appeals to kids of all ages.
Wow.
It's not all about saving the world. This year, ComicCon has teamed up with Cure Cancer to help promote further cancer research.
Cancer touches so many people's lives, so it's really nice that we can support something while having fun.
Book online or grab your tics at the door and celebrate with your comic heroes. Hatea Gripsky, QUT News.
Looking again at our main story, 2 weeks on and Queensland's bushfire threat worsens while rain pummels Sydney.
And still to come, world tension mounts as the US says it's locked and loaded for action in the Mid-East. British PM Boris Johnson has abandoned a planned press conference over Brexit after being booed in Luxembourg. The hostile greeting comes as negotiations with EU leaders grind to a standstill.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was met with hostility in Luxembourg. He was due to give a press conference with his counterpart Prime Minister Xavier Bettel, but abandoned plans at the last minute.
I wanted to thank Mr. Johnson, who was here today, for the exchange that we had.
As the Brexit deadline looms, Mr. Johnson says he's hopeful that a deal will be reached.
This is a difficult moment because clearly we're very, very keen to do it, but I don't want people to think that it's necessarily in the bag. It isn't necessarily in the bag. There will be hard work to be done.
But even the Speaker of Britain's House of Commons, John Bercow, has his doubts.
Is a no-deal Brexit before the 31st of October possible? Well, not unless Parliament changes the law. Not unless Parliament changes the law.
There's less than 7 weeks until Britain is due to leave the EU, and Mr. Johnson is yet to make a deal. Charles Daly-Watkins, QUT News.
Iran is facing increasing international pressure in the wake of the Saudi Arabia oil attacks. But the Iranian president continues to deny responsibility, blaming Yemen.
The recent drone attacks were not on the agenda in Iran's meeting with Russia and Turkey this morning. But with the world watching, the Iranian president was quick to find a scapegoat.
Yemeni people are exercising their legitimate right of defence. The attacks are reciprocal, and the main solution is to halt these attacks.
A different story has emerged from Saudi Arabia, with new evidence indicating that the Yemeni Ansar Allah terrorist group are not to blame.
Initial evidence shows that these weapons are Iranian weapons, and we are investigating this and we will announce the findings.
The US has called on others to join them in their condemnation, labelling Iran's behaviour as unacceptable. But not everyone agrees.
It's not entirely clear who was behind the attack, but the fact that Ansar Allah has claimed responsibility is bad enough.
As the Saudi investigation continues, the US is eager to take action. Harris Wakeling, QUT News.
There's relative calm in Syria at the moment with a ceasefire, but it may not last long. So leaders from Turkey, Iran and Russia are meeting to try and find solutions.
Leaders from the three nations met in Ankara to discuss Syria's future. The Turkish president proposed to extend the safe zone south from his border to northern Syria.
If we can extend the zone to Del Zor and Raqqa, the number of Syrians who return to their country can exceed 3 million.
However, neither Russia or Iran seem keen on the plan, with President Vladimir Putin's primary concern being the removal of US troops from the region.
As for the deployment of the US armed forces, their presence on Syrian territory is illegal. Everyone knows it very well.
This was one of the few points the three leaders agreed upon at the summit.
I would like to express that US troops must leave the region immediately and Syrian government must take control.
Despite the initial promise of a positive outcome from the summit, disagreements between the three parties blocked any real progress. Michael Rodden, QUT News.
US car workers are now demanding what Donald Trump promised them, better pay and conditions. They've been on strike and marching in Detroit and Michigan for the first time in 12 years. A prolonged dispute would quickly shut down General Motors operations across North America. President Trump has urged the union and GM to negotiate.
The body of Zimbabwe's former leader has been returned to his home village. Robert Mugabe was hated by many for leading the country into poverty, but he was regarded as a king in his birthplace. Mugabe died after 37 years as president. Eventually, his remains will be buried in a national heroes' grave in the country's capital.
It's been 2 years since the Rohingya crisis began in Myanmar, and the UN says there are 600,000 people still at risk of genocide.
The UN went on a fact-finding mission and didn't like what it saw. It says Rohingya Muslims face ongoing threats with genocidal intent.
Myanmar has done nothing to dismantle the system of violence and persecution, and the Rohingya who remain in Rakhine live in the same dire circumstances that they did prior to the events of August 2017.
The Rohingyans have been denied citizenship, recognition, and received limited food, healthcare, and education. There have also been claims of military attacks, torture, and 15 deaths in custody.
Chillingly, I have also received reports of villages being burned, as many as 6 since the end of June, which was also when the government imposed the suspension of mobile internet services.
More than 700,000 Muslims fled the area in 2017. But Myanmar's UN ambassador says the issue is being addressed and rejects the term genocide.
Before concluding, Madam Vice President, late Dr. Kofi Annan cautioned on the use of word genocide in referring to the situation in Rakhine State. It is a charge which requires legal review and judicial determination and should not be thrown around loosely.
Nevertheless, the UN wants Myanmar's top generals to face trial over the allegations. Libby Hopper, QUT News.
Crowds of models have flocked to West End wanting to feature in Brisbane Fashion Month. Dozens of hopefuls walked for a panel of fashion experts, but only 1/10 will land a spot in the October event. Those chosen will walk 7 runways set to pop up at iconic Brisbane venues. The event is in its 4th year and bigger than ever, featuring more than 50 Queensland designers.
One of AFL's great players will miss the coming finals round, and another star in rugby league is facing suspension too. Both are vital to their team's chances.
Geelong star Tom Hawkins will miss AFL's preliminary final against Richmond after failing to have his 1-week suspension overturned by the judiciary. Now he's playing a secondary role.
My job now turns to supporting them as best as I can.
Hawkins was charged with striking a West Coast defender in the semi-finals. One of Greater Western Sydney's players, Toby Green, is also contesting a 1-match ban for eye contact. In rugby league, Jared Warrior-Hargraves is fighting a tripping charge. The Sydney Roosters prop was involved in an incident with the Rabbitohs' James Roberts.
We definitely need him. He's been, again last week he was inspirational for us and it's been great for us all year. So he's the leader of our pack and we'll definitely need him in the next game.
Meanwhile, the Broncos captain Darius Boyd may lose his title after the club's humiliating finals loss to Parramatta on Sunday. The NRL team was seen trying to forget the record-breaking 58-0 defeat at a strange version of Mad Monday. Charles Daly Watkins, QUT News.
The weather details are next with Anna Ayres.
And a crazy French flying taxi called the Bubble takes to the Seine. Briefly.
For the first time in a long time, there was a hint of cloud around the city today, but still no rain. Nevertheless, some storms may be heading our way following another dry start to the week. It was a warm morning on the Gold Coast with a minimum of 16, creeping up to 30 degrees across the rest of the region. If you have relatives in Canberra, they can expect a freezing day tomorrow because it could get as low as 0. Melbourne may get some frost in the morning, but as always, it will be a warm one in the north, with Darwin reaching up to 34. And Queensland is living up to its name as the Sunshine State. Expect temperatures in the mid-30s for Mount Isa and Rocky, with only some clouds scattered across Brisbane. On Moreton Bay, the winds will be heading northerly at 20 knots with seas at about 1 metre. The sun will rise at 5:43 tomorrow before setting at 5:42. The Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast will be in the mid-20s tomorrow, but the sunny coast could drop as low as 11 degrees. Both cities can expect some cloud cover for the rest of the week. And with the exception of a possible storm overnight, Brisbane is looking mostly sunny until the weekend. A low of 15 tomorrow and keeping in the mid to late 20s until Friday. That's the weather for now, and unfortunately, still no real joy for those praying for rain.
Just before we go tonight, a French startup business thought it had found the next transport solution, but Paris police were quick to clip its wings.
The Bubble flying taxi is noiseless and pollution-free. Its makers, Sea Bubbles, called it the future of Parisian transport.
In France, the focus is on the taxi version. 1 pilot, 4 passengers. We are waiting for the authorization to have a commercial line between east and west to cross Paris every morning.
The Bubble can reach speeds of 33 kilometres an hour and costs around 320,000 Aussie dollars to build.
You have batteries in the Bubble, 2 electric engines, wings in the water, and with the speed, the wings lift the boat, you reduce the drag, you have a 30 or 40% less drag.
Unfortunately, the test run wasn't all smooth sailing, with police ordering the Bubble to halte, and they've hit a red tape wall at Paris City Hall. So, they're pursuing options in the US and Switzerland, but haven't given up their Parisian dream.
We will wait 6 months, but have a look, there is absolutely nobody on the river.
Sea Bubble still could be flying passengers across the River Seine as early as mid-2020. Max Mellett, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.